Just when I thought I couldn't do any more videos on taxes in 2024, the BC government came out and announced a new tax if you sell your property within 2 years of up to 20% between the purchase price and the new sale price of that property. I'm Michael Ouzas. I'm a realtor here in Toronto, and I will discuss what that looks like in BC and my opinion on my thoughts when it comes to Toronto real estate for the exact same situation if it were to come, since we generally follow what happens in BC. If you want to book in a call with me, click on that first link in the description down below, and still trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of April. So hit that subscribe button and that like button. On CBC News, and we'll get to the actual announcement from the province of British Columbia. But BC announces tax on homes sold 2 years or less after purchase. Tax rate will be 20% for property sold within a year of purchase, sliding to 0 over the following year. This was announced by the BC Finance Minister, Katrine Conroy, who says this is one of the province's latest tools to try to curb speculation over housing in a province where many struggle to afford appropriate shelter. Prices went up as government stepped back and speculators moved in. That's why we're bringing in a home flipping tax as our latest measure to crack down on bad actors. If you jump over to the government of British Columbia's website, here's the BC home flipping tax, which was last updated on February 22nd, 2024. Here's how the tax will work. It will apply to income from the sale of property that was owned for less than 2 years. The tax rate will be the highest for those who own properties for the shortest period and will decline the longer the property is owned. And you may also be exempt from paying tax on income earned from the sale of your property if you are eligible for an exemption. Here's what I found super interesting. And if you are considering selling your property and you've owned it since May 1st, 2023, if you sell that property on January 1st, 2025, you may be subject to that tax and the sale of property may be taxable. If you decide not to sell a property until June 1st, 2025, then the income you earn from the sale of the property would not be subject to the tax. Seller of the property may be a BC resident or resident anywhere else in the world. They did add some exemptions to this 2-year rule: separation or divorce, death, disability or illness, relocation for work, involuntary job loss, change in household membership, personal safety, insolvency. And if you sell your primary residence within 2 years of purchase, you may also be able to exclude up to $20,000 when calculating your taxable income. The purpose of this tax is to support housing supply. We'll discuss that in a second. Not to impede it. Exemptions will be provided for those who add to the housing supply or engage in construction and real estate development. Now, interestingly enough, that was not added to the exemption list right away. If they amend this, that will be really interesting to see. The other element is that if they want to encourage sellers to add more inventory to the market, adding a tax where a seller may not be able to sell within that 2 years because they don't want to pay the 20% tax might not be the best solution when it comes to this. And of course, the last piece here says that more information on exemptions and others will be provided in the future. Now, this idea is not exactly new from the province of British Columbia right now. In 2023, there was actually a flipping tax that was applied here in Canada. And the change is significant when it comes to capital gains versus income. Jumping over to the Canada.ca website, this is the residential property flipping rule. This is for 2023, and it was announced on the budget that came into play in 2022. Essentially, they're deeming property flipping as purchasing residential property and reselling the property in a short period of time to realize a profit. This also includes reselling the rights to purchase a property before its official date, aka an assignment. What are the rules? And here's the change, is that the profit from property flipping is fully taxable as business income and does not qualify for the 50% capital gains inclusion rate or the principal residence exemption. This also has similar exemptions as we just discussed for BC, which actually looks like the exact same kind of breakdown for exemptions. However, death of the taxpayer, person related to the taxpayer. And the list of exemptions is a bit exhaustive, just like the one from the province of BC. And you can take a look at these on the Canada.ca website. But this again is the biggest one, where the sale is not treated as capital gains. So in general, if you purchase a property for $100,000 and sell it for $200,000, 50% 50% of the $100,000 profit would be subject to capital gains tax, whereas this anti-flipping rule adds $100,000 as business income. Big difference when it comes to flipping a property in Canada. Now, the last piece that they mentioned is that between 2020 and 2022, an estimated 7% of residential house sales were sold within 2 years. Now, this is a tax that I wanted to unpack a little bit because I do think that what happened in the past is influencing some of the decisions that are made for the future. In 2020, if someone purchased a property at a relatively low interest rate for a relatively lower price, they in turn flipped that property in the peak market of 2022 after doing maybe some very minimal renovations to come up with a pretty big profit in 2022. Now, that was one of those specific times in the market where that worked really, really well. As we've been continuing through the current real estate market, those margins just aren't really there when it comes to flipping properties. When you factor in the higher cost of construction, the higher cost of any kind of materials for that construction, and the general higher cost to carry that property in interest rates, along with a purchase price that hasn't exactly gone down to where things were 5 years ago, that margin has really, really gotten smaller. One thing I do think is super important is anytime we do blanket taxes for things like this, we tend to forget about where there could actually be benefit when it comes to flipping a property. I do believe the biggest argument right now is that those investors are taking away properties from first-time buyers that are entering the marketplace. I actually have a bit of a different thought on that. In my opinion, investors are looking for properties that typically first-time buyers may not be competing for in the market. Let me show you a quick example of what I mean. I went over to Google and just typed in Toronto dilapidated houses, and this came up in CBC, and this showed a house from 2015. It says abandoned home. If we look at the photos here, there are plenty of them. This is a great example of homes that I would hope are going to fall into that exemption. And these are also readily available on the market to purchase in various markets across Ontario and in Canada. In my experience, first-time buyers generally don't want to take on properties like this and most likely won't be going to see them when it comes time to showing those properties. I do think if we see this tax in Toronto, Ontario, we should give it a little bit more thought because it might not be the exact solution that we're looking for. And if you are a home purchaser that purchased your property and are looking to put it back on the market for whatever reason, you may be subject to this tax if you don't fall exactly under one of those exemptions, or if you just wanted to turn around and sell that property because you purchased it and maybe you want to move to another area and it doesn't fall under that exemptions. This is one of those things that could really be detrimental in bringing more supply to the market if that's the case. Now all sellers will wait for those 2 years, and maybe those supplies that would start coming back to the market may be held for longer. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on if you think this tax would have any factor when it comes to making A, houses more affordable, or B, bringing more properties to the supply in the market. As I mentioned on the BC website, I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.